Good afternoon and welcome to the Next Gen Planners Big T Conference Special.
My name is Dan Graham.
I'm Francois and we are here every day during conference week to bring you insights from amazing people in financial planning.
So thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. Apologies they were a little bit late. The main conference actually ran over by a substantial amount. So that is why we are a little bit late today. But thank you to everyone for joining us. And today's big topic is financial planning, just like this morning. And we want to hear from you guys on your thoughts on this big topic. So if you could leave us a comment in the live chat, that would be amazing.
Yeah, we absolutely love the comments. So on the show this afternoon, we have three awesome guests. First up, I have Rizanne Oosthuisen, who was my co-host this morning. She's from Profile Me, so get excited to chat to her. We have a fantastic replay of a crucial talk on diversity and inclusion from Olivia Parnell, which stems back from 2020. And then we have Mel Holman from CATS. Really excited to chat to her.
So shall we get into the first guest? Our first guest is Rizanne Oosthuisen from Profile Me. Hi, Rizanne, how you doing?
Hey, Dan, I'm good, thank you. And you?
I'm absolutely buzzing after today's conference. It's been amazing. I mean, I've said that word so many times today, amazing. It's actually like I'm running out of the vocabulary in my language of all the things to describe today. What's been the standouts for you today?
I'm not going to put anything out in particular, any names, but one thing that's a common thread that is coming out of this, which really, I mean, it's pulled at the heartstrings incredibly, is that the sense of vulnerability that's come out, which just shows to me that with the Speaker and Influencer program, it's a safe space and that people are able to express vulnerability, which is really, really wonderful. And for me, a little bit of a theme on this conference that I see is this is about people and not about words. Opening up conversations, opening up, different points of views, different ways of thinking about things. If I can sum it up in one word, I would say for me, the theme is this conference is human.
Oh, awesome. Rizanne, I know how much you've been involved in the training of the speakers as well. You know, you gave some great advice in sessions that I was part of when we had the drop-in sessions. You were always helping on WhatsApps and tech rehearsals and name it. So you were really intricately involved with us as well. I think you could just as well be a coach soon. But how much have you enjoyed seeing the growth in our speakers?
It is a wonderful thing to see from that very first session where people get together and it's a little bit stiff and everybody's a bit, this is a lot of information. And then again, going through that process where people start opening up, where they start sharing experiences and where they start being, vulnerable and showing a big side of authenticity. And I also think that's just goes to show again, it is really in shared experiences that we build rapport and relationships, finding commonality.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those people who have been speaking today, I mean, they've obviously conquered something which they never, ever thought they could achieve. So that is one thing that they've got now. They've got it in their bank. That's an experience that they've lived through. But for those who are speaking today and tomorrow, what advice would you give them, or what have you seen people really do with this experience to use it to their benefit in the future? What advice would you give them?
For those that spoke today, I would say clap for yourself. Definitely, you did an incredible job, and it's done. Now I think it's really looking back, taking the time to reflect on the process that you've been through, how you felt when it was finished, maybe some things that you could have done better, and using this as a soundboard in the your client interactions, or maybe you are going forward and you will be speaking to larger audiences, using this framework and using this experience to really build off that and use that going forward. For those speaking tomorrow, I would say play it forward. Think about I'm going to do it, I'm doing it, it's done. Probably you're feeling nervous right now, but what you have right now is good enough. You are good enough. It really is just now about stepping up to the plate, enjoying the moment, and doing the best delivery that you can.
Awesome, Rizanne. Thank you so much. It wraps up our time together this afternoon. I've spent a whole lot of time today with you. It's absolutely awesome. Thank you very much. And thanks for coming on to the Big T. And I'll see you back tomorrow.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Alrighty, so next up we have a monologue from Olivia Parnell from the Next Gen Planners Conference held back in 2020. 2020 always gives me some goosebumps. It's the year of lockdown, but let's give it a watch. It's an important one.
When we talk about financial services and we touch on the topic of inclusion, it requires us to ask two urgent and complicated questions. These are, who is a service provided to and who provides that service? It can become very easy very quickly to exclude yourself from the conversation if you are typically part of the group that is included within the industry, either as a client or an employee. And you can nominate yourself from being tied to the very thing that's causing your inclusion at the expense of somebody else's exclusion. And the ability to do this is a privilege, both a powerful and at times a dangerous one as well. Eduardo Bonilla Silva once wrote about meritocracy and neoliberalism, and how these things have created spaces where questions such as who can be ignored. They argue that as a society, we are taught that the cream rises to the top. However, particularly with racial matters, people seem unconcerned that the colour of the cream that usually rises to the top is white. So looking at this more closely, the industry does attract a certain demographic, despite the fact that managing finances is something the majority of society will have to do throughout their life. So why is this? You have the fundamental principles that to invest money, you need to have money. And I often hear the excuse that it's people's lack of education that makes them unable to be able to financially plan for the future. But the societal issues that surround demographics and their oppression towards wealth are troubling and by no means new. It's not necessarily due to somebody not working hard enough or haven't got the right ethos or not being sent to the right school. Excuses like this simply shift responsibility and accountability away from a culture that creates these societal issues, and the casual excuse of education becomes problematic. So you may have a single mum that lives paycheck to paycheck, or a working class family that throughout generations have never been exposed to financial planning, or a young person that's just been released from the care system that's never had experience with financial planning, or even a member of the BAME community that's never had access to financial planning. Now, people with these backgrounds or in this situation, they may have come to convince themselves over time that they don't have the knowledge or the information and thus don't have the means to accumulate wealth. My argument, however, is that it's deliberate that they don't have the information or the knowledge. If we look at the timeline of society, it wasn't until 1882 that women were allowed to independently own a house. It wasn't until 1928 that both men and women from working class backgrounds were able to vote. We can flash forward to the 1950s and there were signs denying access to non-whites. But if you couldn't rent a room or get a job or have somebody vouch for you because of the colour of your skin, how was you meant to get a reference that would be needed to take out a loan from a bank? Even today, a study conducted by Solomon, Cara and Molyneux, they looked at 52,000 households across the UK. And they concluded that there was an evident discrimination on the UK banking system's behalf towards minority households when they are wanting to get applications approved for consumer credit. We can go across disciplines. Sociologists such as Herbert Gintis and Samuel Bowles, they term together the hidden curriculum. And that theorises the ways that pupils are taught to accept the status quo and accept a social order that places blame on working class individuals with lower expectations. So going back to my examples, is it too far-fetched to then claim that we potentially have a demographic in our country that are so disenfranchised that they don't consider financial planning to be an option? That their expectations are so low that they won't prioritise financial planning, or worse, that they can't prioritise financial planning because they're so disenfranchised? And are we asking enough complicated questions here to determine what's happening? Privilege, it grants you with options, either racial, socioeconomic, or gender. Every single one of us in our society are affected by racism, classism, sexism, amongst many other things. And the sad and harsh reality of it is that those that are negatively affected by it, they are the ones that are least likely to see financial planning as an option. They do not have that privilege. And this is something that has been tracked across disciplines for years, decades. Now, sitting across from this is an industry that does lack diversity. If we revisit the problem with using education as an excuse again, those such as Anthony Giddens argue that people from minority backgrounds and working class backgrounds, through the schooling process, they're taught that they're just not clever enough to get highly paid or highly skilled jobs. And when they begin to accept their individual and academic limitations, they tend to move into jobs with limited prospects. Namal Pawar brilliantly contributed to this when she spoke about invisible bodies. And in her book, Space Invaders, she talks about taking up space that isn't typically reserved for you, particularly women of colour, taking up space that traditionally has been reserved for white men. But this isn't just theoretical, this is very much a reality. I am the only Black female that works at my office, and I am the only female advisor, and I'm not actually fully qualified yet. The FCA's annual diversity report can reflect this. Their aim by this year is to have 8% of senior leadership roles filled by those that identify as BAME. 8%. In fact, the figure for this statistic was as low as 2% back in 2014. Maybe another question that we should be asking is there an intersection between the lack of diversity and those that are excluded from the financial planning services? Henry Lefebvre once famously wrote, "Each living body is space, and it creates itself in space." Within this context, that may translate as who is employed within the industry will inevitably create the culture for who the services are provided to. But should we not have an industry that's representative of the society that we're trying to serve? Should we not be trying to serve everybody in society? Should we not be challenging these discrepancies to ensure that each and every member of our society has access to high standard financial planning? So the topic of inclusion and the questions of who for and who provides it are, as we can see, very complicated. But when we open up the discourse and create safe spaces for these questions to be asked and the uncomfortable answers to be heard, it provides people with insight and acknowledgement into the many societal issues that does structure the financial industry. But I must stress safe spaces, because fragility is very real, and it has shut down too many conversations over the decades about topics such as these. I must also ask that we're mindful of the language that we're using. The current climate has seen a whole host of people use the word debate, but diversity and inclusion, we're talking again about racism, sexism, classism, amongst many other things, which means we're also talking about oppression, discrimination, and inequality, which then amounts to people's basic human rights. Nobody's human rights should be up for debate. It's not by chance that our clients may be of one demographic. And it is not by chance that there are certain demographics that are least likely to reach out for financial planning help. And it is not by chance that our industry is dominated by white men. But unless we recognise this, and again, create safe spaces where we can analyse these discrepancies, progress will not happen, and the included will continue to exclude themselves from the conversation. Thank you.
Wow, I mean, what an inspirational talk from Olivia. And we've heard many of these things today as well, which is quite like bringing everything together for me. So it's really awesome to listen to her and to things that are real and things we need to stand up and pay attention to from that point. Well, now it's time for our big T, big topic. And today we're talking about financial planning. And joining us to kick us off on this segment, we have Mel Holman from CATS. You can have
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi, Mel. Sorry, that was me pressing the wrong buttons. Today. Thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you on the show today.
You're welcome.
As Francois mentioned there, our big topic is the biggest topic ever, which is financial planning. And you guys at CATS specialize in financial planning compliance, which is a very interesting area at the moment. What are the big things at the moment, though, that our audience really need to know about when it comes to compliance at this time?
Right, well, there's a few things. The biggie coming up is about the new consumer duty. So the second paper on consumer duty was published in December 2021. We're expecting the policy statement in July this year. And then the effective date, when all firms should have done their gap analysis and got consumer duty sussed, needs to be in place by April next year, April 2023. So whilst we haven't had the policy statement published yet, it's a chunky piece of work. For a lot of firms, there won't be a fundamental shift in what you need to do or anything, but it's all about evidencing how you're meeting the relevant cross-cutting rules and the outcomes that the FCA want you to deliver upon. So it's a bit of I don't think for many firms, good financial planning firms, there'll be an in-depth change of culture at all, but there will be a piece of work to be done. That's a biggie. The other thing, arguably you could say, is not compliance, but I think as a profession, as an industry, we need to be looking to work on helping clients identify scams, fraudulent email, fraudulent activity, and communicate how these things are happening, just to put them on aware. Cybercrime is picking up a bit of a pace, I must say, and it is a focus of the FCA. The other thing to be mindful of is if you're owning a financial planning firm, don't be surprised if we start to see a paper around increasing capital adequacy. There's a big focus to try and prevent firms from landing on the FSCS and going insolvent. So, watch this space.
Awesome. Mel, I can hear, like, you've been around for a long time. You've seen many things. I wonder if there's something new that is going to pass your desk. But I mean, with that in mind, like, what advice do you have for financial planners on getting on top of their compliance?
Do you know what? The best firms starting out at outset is that they have a good team. The planners have a good, reliable team around them, and everybody knows what their job is. Everybody's accountable for their job. There's good leadership in place, and from there you get good culture, and there's all a positive vibe. So that's a starting point for good compliance. As strange as that seems, that is a good. Starting off from that top level is good culture, which is what the FCA is striving to achieve. From there, so everybody needs to be competent to do their job, obviously. Most firms then have good procedures in place, processes in place, which they follow. And so, but the caveat, that you do need to put a human element on that, because there's no good having a process for the sake of a process. And there's no good having a process which nobody follows. And there's no good having a process that leads to a poor consumer outcome. Something can be compliant but rubbish, and then that doesn't help anything at all. So all about having good processes in place, your back office systems, making sure they're all relevant and up to date and they're used, not just some people use them, some people don't. There has to be a common process for using those systems that you use. But if you want a quick win, simple how to meet your compliance tasks, have a good compliance monitoring plan in place. It doesn't matter how you do that, Excel spreadsheet, your Outlook, taskbar, if you're back office system, as long as we've detailed what compliance tasks are required and who's responsible for those and when they're due, that is a good quick win straight away.
Brilliant.
The last one would be as I say about the back office system, sorry, just making sure that when you are loading documents up to the system, that they're all worded correctly, they're filed correctly and things like that. This sounds like it's easy stuff and not compliance, but this is absolutely compliance, because financial planners do a blooming good job. But the problem is the lack of evidence to support that.
Yeah.
And, that is, don't overthink compliance. If where it's inherently part of your culture and part of your processes, compliance should be easy. It should not be a business prevention.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the points about kind of little things like file names and things like that, they might seem like little things in the moment, but if we think of the effect of compounding, little things over time merge, snowball into bigger things, and then it all just becomes one big tangled mess. So even if you could just change one small process, eventually in the long run will be a much better thing. So amazing. Final question for you then, Mel, before we close things off for today's show. This is a big question. Of course, we've got today's big topic, which is financial planning. We like to think big on this show. What do you see the future of compliance in financial planning looking like?
Looking like? Well, that is a big question. The FCA are committed to being a data-led regulator. They want to gather correct data so that they can be more forward-thinking, identify poor consumer outcomes and trends, and take action more efficiently. So that's a good thing, a positive thing. So us as planners, I would expect there'll be more reporting to be made to the FCA, if I'm honest, which then leads into itself again about having proper back office systems and reporting, etc. That will make your life easier. I do think that with the FCA actually, coming to the 21st century and getting more IT focused, hopefully they will better understand about some of the IT facilities out there, and we can build a bit more innovation to make the whole client journey and experience of being more online and still ensure that consumers have good outcomes and understand what they're getting. I think with younger generation of planners, we've got to encourage that. We've got so many firms that are looking to retire in a few years' time. We've got to have that encouragement of the younger generation of financial planning firms, which I think in turn will just be a bit more innovative and they won't see compliance as an issue because it's just inherently that's what they're brought up with. So it's not going to be an issue for them. I think that they should find life a lot easier. That's my hope. That's my dream.
No, it's a lovely batch of on this Tuesday afternoon. So that is amazing. Well, let's bring in all of our guests for today. Rizanne, thank you so much for that. I'm going to let you go and have a lie down because you've had a very busy morning this morning and afternoon watching everyone's talks. Mel, thank you so much for that fantastic interview there. And of course, thank you to Olivia for allowing us to use her talk from 2020 on that crucial topic, which is still very relevant today as well. So really need to work on that. Francois, any last words from you?
I just want to say, Mel, you are the most passionate compliance person I've ever met in my life. I hope I get to meet you in person when I'm in the UK. But thank you very much for your time. Dan, thank you for the opportunity to co-host this morning and this afternoon with you. I really appreciate it. And Rizanne,
thank you all.
Thank you, guys.
We'll be back tomorrow morning at 7:30 a.m. UK time, 8:30 a.m. South Africa time. And our big topic tomorrow is a fantastic one. It's 21st century investing. And we've got some amazing guests covering all sorts of different topics. So be sure to join us on that if you're up early enough in the morning. And of course, if you've got a conference ticket, look forward to day 2 tomorrow. But thank you so much to Francois for being my amazing co-host. Thank you to Rizanne, to Mel, and to Olivia for being our amazing guests. And to you, our audience, we'll see you all very, very soon. Bye-bye.